Sechas Bava Kamma Daf Lamed Vez begins immediately following the Mishnah, contains two additional Mishnayos. So the Mishnah that we just concluded the last daf discussed accidents. The daf will continue discussing accidents that happen and who's responsible. So our first Gemara, following the last Mishnah, is discussing two sugyas. Number one is if you do something bershus, can you be possibly chayav for causing an injury to someone? And the second sugya is if you do something strange and you end up being injured yourself by someone else, is that person responsible? So let's begin. The Gemara discusses a question that was asked by Rabbi Bar Nasan to Rav Huna. What's if somebody is being mishamish his wife, and it's Tashmish Shemitah, of course, and he injures her back? So he had permission, obviously, had Rishus to do what he was doing. Is that a reason for him to be pater, or is he chayiv anyway? Because he should have been more careful, he should have paid more attention to what he was doing. So Mar says you can bring a right from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah discussed two people who were walking and carrying chavias, carrying their barrels, and they knocked into each other. We said they're both pater because they both have permission to be going where they're going. So here also he has permission to do what he's doing, so he shouldn't be chayiv for that. Smaras Hakasha from a mission we're going to see on Amid Beis here that says if you have somebody who's chopping wood in one rishos and a piece flies into another rishos, even if they're both rishos hayachid, each one is in their own rishos hayachid, he's chayiv for the injury that he causes to someone else. And over there, everyone's in his own rishos and he's still chayiv. Here, where you're going, where the husband is going into his wife's rishos, quite literally, certainly you should be chayiv. The Gemara says, okay, but then what are you going to do with our Mishnah that indicated clearly that you're pater? If you have permission to be going where you're going, if you are where you're allowed to be, you're pater for that. So the answer is a big difference. In our Mishnah, both of them are equal. You have two people walking equally on the street. Each one is following his own path, and they happen to bang into each other. Neither of them is more responsible than the other. In the case here, however, there's a very big difference. The husband is doing an activity. The wife is just minding her own business. The husband is clearly the one who's moving, who's doing the action. And therefore, he's clearly causing the hezek, and therefore, he's the one who's more responsible. So Gemara says, but we know that in a Maaseh Bia, both the man and the woman are considered to be doing an action. The Torah, when it describes Maaseh Znos, Maaseh Niyaf, it says, it talks about the people that did the activity. That means that they both are considered to have done something. Make care of Amal. So my answer is, no, they both had Hana, and they're both responsible for their Hana that they had, but the Maaseh, the actual activity, that's only him. And since he's the one who's doing the activity, he's the one who's responsible for the accident. Now, the Gemara goes to its second sugya, which is what happens when you have someone doing something strange and someone else comes along and is mazikim. So you have two cows in a Rosh Hashanah, and Reish Lakish says one is lying down, which is mashuna. It's an odd thing to do in the street. It's not proper. And the other one is walking, and one kicks the other. So if the cow which is walking kicks the cow that's lying down, then he's pater because it's kol mashana ba'achar v'shina bay. Since the one who's lying down is behaving inappropriately, if it triggers another cow to harm him, he's not responsible. It's the other way around, though, says Reish Lakish. If the cow that's lying kicks the cow that's walking, and the cow that's walking was minding his own business, it wasn't doing anything odd, and the cow that's lying is chayiv for that. So Gemara wants to say that we have a raya to it from our Mishnah, which the Gemara is then going to turn into a kasha, answer it, and then bring another raya. So the Gemara says that the initial raya from the Mishnah should be, because we have the case where one person is walking carrying a beam, and then behind him is someone carrying a barrel. So if the person with the barrel walks into the person in front of him, and the barrel breaks, so the responsibility is on the person who was in the back because he walked into him, it's not on the person in the front. If, however, the person in the front stopped, and then the guy behind him walks into him, then the responsibility is on the guy in the front, the one who stopped. So the Gemara says, the one who stopped in the front is like the cat that was lying down. He did a shinoi. And the one who walked into him is like the mehalachas, it's like the cow who was walking, who then came and kicked the cow that was lying on the floor. And you see that the responsibility is on the cow that was lying down. So the responsibility in our Mishnah is on the person in front who stopped. You see the one who did the shinoi, the one who changed from the normal way of operations, he's the one who's responsible for the accident. So therefore, the Gemara says it's a raya to Reish Lakish's principle. The one who stopped is the one who's chayiv. So the Gemara says not only is it not a raya, it's a kasha. Because look at the next thing that happens here in the Mishnah. It says that if the walking animal is kicked by the lying down animal, then the lying down animal is chayiv. It's only if it kicks him intentionally. If the lying down animal is just minding his own business and the guy behind him walks and trips on him, then the lying down animal is pater. So that's against Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish had said that the one behind, the one who's walking and who's behaving properly, is not at fault, and if he gets injured, then you have to pay for him. If he's carrying the barrel and he loses the barrel, he gets paid for that. But Amish doesn't say that. Amish says only if the one who's in front kicks him. Only if the cow who's lying down kicks the other cow intentionally. So that would be a proof against what Rish Lakish is saying. So to that, the Gemara says, no, it's not a kasha. A Mishnah was talking about where the person was blocking the entire road. He was lying crossways across the road, and there was no way for the other person to get by. Here, in Rish Lakish's case, the cow is lying on this side of the road. So if it's lying on the side of the road, then the other cow, the one who's walking, should have gone on the other side. He didn't have to be so close. That's why if he tripped on the cow, that is his responsibility, and he would be chayev. It would be his own problem then. Now, the Gemara wants to say, perhaps have a right to Rish Lakish from the next case in the Mishnah. The next case in the Mishnah is where the chavis owner was in the front and the guy in the back was carrying the beam. So if he walks into the chavis and he breaks it, then it's his responsibility. He walked into him. However, if the man with the chavis in the front stopped and the guy walks into him from behind, it's the Bava Kamma's responsibility, and the one from behind is potter. Now, this is like the case where the walking animal kicks the animal who is lying down. Same thing. The one in the front is like the one who's lying down. And here the halacha is that he is potter for what he did to him, just like the one who's walking is potter for what he did to the one who's lying down in the front. So it should be a raya. So Gemara says, no, it's not a raya, because over here, in this case of walking, he's walking normally. He's doing normal activities. Here, in our case, he kicks him. That's an extra step. Who says you have a right to kick the guy? Maybe you have a right to walk, and if he causes damage, you cause damage. But actually go ahead and kick him, that you don't see a proof from in our Mishnah. That's an extra chiddush of Rish Lakish that you don't see. Now we get our next Mishnah, brief Mishnah, continues discussing accidents and talks about where somebody was speeding. So if you have two people that are walking in Rosh Hashanah, one is walking and one is running, or if they were both running and they bang into each other and any damage is caused, they are both potter. The Mishnah says it doesn't seem to be any more chiyuv for the one who's going faster, the one who's speeding. So Gemara says the Mishnah doesn't fit with Isi ben Yehuda. Isi ben Yehuda says that the one who's speeding is chayev, the one who's running is chayev because he's doing something which is out of the ordinary. Therefore, it's his responsibility. The Gemara adds that Isi ben Yehuda agrees on Erev Shabbos. There, you're permitted to run. Apparently, the speed limit goes higher then, and it's Bershus, and therefore he's not responsible. And Rav Yechon says the halacha is like Isi ben Yehuda. The Gemara asks, how could Rav Yechon hold like Isi ben Yehuda? Our Mishnah is a Stam Mishnah, and it doesn't fit with Isi ben Yehuda. Rav Yechanan holds that halacha is always like a Stam Mishnah. This Mishnah says if one was running, one was walking, or they're both running, they're both potter. There's no further responsibility for the one who's running and for the one who's walking. So Mary says our Mishnah must be talking on Erev Shabbos, being Shmashos, and there you have permission to run, and therefore he's not anymore chayav just because he was running. And you see that because it says if they were both running, they're both patur. And why do you have to say that case? How is that different than the first case? If one's running and one's walking, they're both patur. If they're both running, for sure they're both patur. So it must mean if one is running and one is walking, he's patur that's talking about an Erev Shabbos bein Shmashos. But if it will be during the week, then if one is running and one is walking, then he's chayev. But if it will be two running even during the week, it's pater. It's sort of like a chasuri mechzerad, adding that understanding into the Mishnah. Now, the Gemara discusses the Isi ben Yehuda a little bit more. The Gemara said before that Isi ben Yehuda agrees on an Erev Shabbos bein Shmashos that you're pater because you are allowed to run. It's birishus then. The Gemara says, what is this rishus? The Gemara says this is going out to meet the kala, to meet the queen, like Rabbi Chanina said, let's go out and greet the queen, the kala, and some say to greet the Shabbos kala, the Shabbos queen. Rabbi Yana used to wrap himself and would go out and he would say, Blei kala, as if he's going to greet the royalty. Now we get our next Mishnah, which is the last Mishnah for the daf, and the Mishnah has a lengthy commentary. Short Mishnah discussing what happens if someone's chopping wood and a piece falls out and hits or damages someone else. So it discusses three rishus: your rishus, rishus rabim, or someone else's rishus. It doesn't matter where you're chopping and where it flies, any of these rishuyas, you're chayiv. So from your rishus, it flies to Rishus Rabim. From Rishus Rabim, it flies to someone else's rishus. Or from your rishus, it flies to someone else's rishus. In all these cases, you're chayiv, whatever happens. So as the Gemara, why do you need to mention all three cases? First, there's a chiddush in each of them. If you'd only say that you're chopping in Rishus Yachid and the damage is close in Rishus Rabim, you may think that that's the reason you're responsible there is because you should be more careful not to have wood flying into the public domain where there are a lot of people walking. But if you're chopping in Rishus Rabim and it flies in Rishus Yachid where it's not common to have people, maybe you would not be chayiv for that. And if you would say only that case, I would think that's because you didn't have permission to do what you're doing, to chop wood in Rishus Rabim to go into Rishus Yachid. But in a case where it's from Rishus Yachid to Rishus Rabim, you're in your own Rishus, you're chopping, that would be okay. And therefore you would not be chayiv. And if you would say those two cases, I would think, well, each of them, there's a reason why you're chayiv for each of them, either because you didn't have Rishus to do it, or because you're chopping to a place where it's shchiach, that there's a lot of people there. If ever it's from your own Rishus to someone else's Rishus, where you have permission, and there's no Rishus Rabim involved, I think you're patur for that, kamash malan, that you're chayiv for all three situations. The Gemara now brings a brisa that's related. The brisa discusses if somebody walks into a carpentry shop and a piece of wood flies from the axe of the carpenter and it hits him, and either kills him or he's injured. So what is the halacha? So if he went in shaloi b'rishus, he didn't ask permission, then the carpenter is patur for whatever happens to him. If, however, he went with rishus, that is, the carpenter knew he was there, he asked permission, and he allowed him in, so then he's chayiv. So what's he chayiv for? This is machlekes. So Yisrael Chanina says he's chayiv for 4 types of injury payments. He's chayiv for nezik tzar ripo in sheves. You're not chayiv for the bleishes because you only chayiv for embarrassing someone if it's done with kavana. But for those 4 things you are chayiv. However, you're patur from the galus. So if you killed him, you don't have to go to exile for killing someone b'shayi by accident. What's the reason? Because this is different than the classic case of killing someone b'shegeg. That classic case is where you're chopping wood in the forest and then hit someone who's also in the forest. In that case, the reason why you go to galus is because both of you had permission to be where you are in your own rishus. It's your own place. You're doing your own thing. Here, it's the carpenter's own store. So even though the guy came in with permission, but he came into the carpenter's store, so the carpenter doesn't have to go to galus for what happens there. Now, Rava disagrees. Rava says, Kav Chomer, he should have to go to galus, because the carpenter gave him permission to be there. In the case of the forest, no one gave anybody permission to be there. Each one's doing their own thing. Here, he went in, al das the carpenter. Certainly, the carpenter should be responsible for what happens to him. So, therefore, Rava Bar Chanina explains, yeah, you're right. He's patur from the galus, not because he's not so responsible for it. He's patur because he's even more responsible. The rule is, you only have to go to galus for a shegeg. This is called karev l'mezid. This is close to being done on purpose. He's much more responsible for it. It's not enough to go to galus. You don't have the right to go to galus and get that kapara. And that's what Yisrael Bar Chanina meant. Now, Rava has the kasha, though, on this concept that a karev l'mezid doesn't have to go to galus. Yes, the question from Rabbi. The Rabbi says if a person was chayav malchus from the basin, so the basin will always evaluate the person how many malchus he can withstand, and they give a number. And if the person who is applying the malchus went ahead and did one more, and he died because of that, he has to go to galus. So Rav is asking, this is definitely a case of karev l'mezid. He should have known that he's not able to withstand the extra hit. That's why he was evaluated at 1 less than that. And why then does he have a right to go to galus? He's definitely karev l'mezid. It's very much intentional what he did. He didn't intend to kill him, but he certainly intended to do what he did, and he should have known better. So Rav Simi of Naharda answers, he didn't hit him 1 extra than he knew he was supposed to. What happened was that he made a mistake. He was counting, and he counted wrong. Let's say the Bezin said 15, and he counted 15 to be 14, and therefore he added 1 more. So Rava wasn't happy with that answer, and he struck him with his shoe, the Gemara says, or he struck him on his shoe. And he said, the person who's applying the malchus is not the one who's counting. So your answer makes no sense. We have a brisa that says that the senior judge is the one who reads the psukim, the second to the senior counts, and the third to senior is the one who actually hits him. So you see, he's not counting. So what do you mean that he counted wrong? So it says Rav Simi that the dayanim, the actual mistake here is that the dayanim made a mistake in how much he could withstand. They thought he could withstand 15, he could only really withstand 14, and therefore he died on the 15th one. That's the case of the shegi that he goes to galus. The Gemara asks another kasha on the concept that karev l'mezid doesn't go to galus. The Mishnah that you have a brayso that says if somebody throws a rock into Rishus Harabim and he kills someone, he goes to Golos. Question is, he should have known that there are people walking around in Rishus Harabim, and therefore it's karev lemezid. He should have known more than that. He can't say that it's really a shegeg. So the answer is the case is he wasn't just throwing rocks, which will say he was knocking down his wall. Versus again, he has to look where he's knocking the wall. He has to look where the rocks are going to fall. Versus it was at night, he couldn't see. So the Gemara asks, night also, he could still look and be careful. So the Gemara says he was knocking the wall on the day where they collect the trash, and it was the garbage day. Shouldn't be anybody around, and it was into the garbage, therefore he shouldn't have suspected anyone was there. So he asks, this garbage, what type of trash is it? If it's one that people use to relieve themselves, so then it's common someone should be there, and weiter is karev lemezid. And if it's one where it's not common, so then he's a night. How is he supposed to suspect that someone's there? So Papa answers, it's a place that people use at night, but they don't use during the day. And there are some that end up that stay there long, and they're there during the day. So he's not a karev lemezid. You can't call him the mezid because people don't really use it during the day. But he's not an einus because it does happen that someone can be found there during the day. Now, the Gemara brings another version of this. Gemara brought by Rav Papa in the name of Rava, and this is on the first half of our Mishnah instead of the second half. The first half we saw that the first half of the brayso we just brought instead of the second half on the Reisha. So the Reisha said if somebody walks into the shop of a carpenter without permission and a piece of wood flies and hits him and he dies, so he's pater. And the question was pater from what and chayev on what? And basically Rav Chanina said he's chayev for the four things if he didn't die, for nezek zaripa sheves. And pater means he's pater from the galus. Same commentary as we said before that he's pater from the galus, but here we're talking about a case where he entered without rishus as opposed to a case where he entered with rishus. So we're saying that without rishus, the carpenter is pater from having to go to galus for the piece of wood that hit the guy in the face. Says Umar, the one who said it on the Seifa where it was Bershus, certainly in the Reisha, he would be pater from Galus, because it's Shalei Bershus there. The one who said it on the Reisha where it was Shalei Bershus, but the Seifa, since it came Bershus, the carpenter would be Chayev for the Galus. Umar asks, should he really be Chayev for Galus? We understand the Brisa, somebody who walks into the shop of a blacksmith and sparks fly out and hit him in the face and he dies. He's pater even if he came in Bereshus. He's the blacksmith is pater even if he came in Bereshus. So says, what's that referring to? The person that was there was actually the apprentice of the blacksmith. The blacksmith's the only apprentice. That's why he's pater if he was hit by the sparks. My ask just because he's the apprentice of the blacksmith means you have a right to kill the guy. So my answer is the blacksmith was trying to chase him out. He was trying to get him to leave, and he was refusing to leave. So Gemara says, because he's refusing to leave again, you have a right to kill the guy? So my answer is no, the blacksmith thought he'd already left. So that's the case. The reason why the blacksmith is pater, because since he was sending him out, he assumed that he already left. So Gemara asks if that would be true for anybody. Why does it have to be the apprentice of the blacksmith? Anybody who he thought he left, it would be okay. So the Gemara answer is no, someone else is not afraid of the blacksmith. And therefore, why should the blacksmith assume he left unless he checked to see that he left? This guy is the student of the blacksmith. He's afraid of the blacksmith, and the blacksmith can assume if I told him to leave, he left, and therefore is considered to be a real shogeg for the injury that happens to him because he has a right to assume that the guy had already walked out the door. Now, the Gemara has one more version of this entire discussion as to where the person is pater from the galus. This is Rav Zvid in the name of Rava. He says it's talking about where somebody actually walked into the path of the flying rock or piece of wood. And it's learned from the pasuk which says umatza. The piece of wood goes and finds someone. That's an excluded case where the guy found the wood. So Elizabeth Yaakov says that somebody had an Evan fly out of his hand, and somebody else came and caught the Evan on his head, meaning he went and put his head in the path of the stone. He's pater for that case. Says Rav Yosef Bar Chanina that pater is from the galus, but he would still be chayiv in Arba Dvarim, nezek tzar ripo in Shevas. So Gemara says the one who says it on this case certainly would say it on the previous case that he is pater for that. But when this isn't on the previous case, here he's pater completely, not just from the galus, he's pater from everything.